The courtroom was silent except for the soft hum of the air conditioning. Judge Patricia Thornton had been listening for nearly an hour, her expression unreadable behind those wire-rimmed glasses. My wife Vanessa sat at the plaintiff's table, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, her shoulders shaking with what appeared to be genuine sobs. 23 years of marriage. 23 years of building a life together. And now she sat there, performing for the judge like she was auditioning for a daytime soap opera. Her attorney, a sharp woman in a gray suit, had just finished presenting their case. According to them, I was a cold, emotionally absent husband who had neglected my wife's needs for over 2 decades. They claimed Vanessa had sacrificed her promising career as an interior designer to support my medical practice, to raise our children, to be the perfect doctor's wife at every hospital function and charity gala. They wanted $22,000 a month in spousal support. They wanted our $4 million home in Palo Alto. They wanted 60% of my retirement accounts. They wanted the vacation property in Lake Tahoe. Vanessa looked up at the judge, her voice trembling. I gave him everything, Your Honor. My youth, my career, my dreams. I stood by him through medical school, through his residency, through every 18-hour shift. And now that the children are grown, now that he's successful, he wants to throw me away like I'm nothing. I watched her performance from across the room. At 62 years old, I thought I had seen everything. I had delivered thousands of babies, held the hands of dying patients, told families the worst news imaginable. But nothing had prepared me for the betrayal, sitting 20 feet away from me, crying crocodile tears. My attorney, David Chen, leaned over and whispered, "They're going hard on the emotional angle." The judge seems sympathetic. I nodded but said nothing. I had learned patience in the operating room. I had learned that sometimes you had to wait for exactly the right moment. Judge Thornton shuffled some papers. Dr. Harrison, your wife's counsel has presented substantial documentation regarding her contributions to the marriage and her current financial needs. Do you have anything to say in response? David started to stand, but I put my hand on his arm. Your Honor, I said, my voice steady, I would like to call a witness. The judge raised an eyebrow. This is a preliminary hearing, Dr. Harrison. Witness testimony is unusual at this stage. I understand, Your Honor, but I believe this testimony is essential to establishing the true nature of our marriage and my wife's claims. Vanessa's attorney objected immediately. Your Honor, we were not informed of any witnesses. This is highly irregular. Judge Thornton considered for a moment. Who is this witness, Dr. Harrison? I looked directly at my wife. Her tears had stopped. There was something new in her eyes now. Uncertainty. I would like to call Rachel Torres to the stand. The color drained from Vanessa's face. Her attorney leaned over, whispering urgently, but Vanessa wasn't listening. She was staring at me with an expression I had never seen before. Fear. And who is Rachel Torres? The judge asked. She is my wife's younger sister. The doors at the back of the courtroom opened. Rachel walked in, her heels clicking against the marble floor. She was 58 now, her dark hair streaked with gray, but she still carried herself with the same quiet dignity I had always admired. She didn't look at Vanessa as she passed. She kept her eyes forward, fixed on the witness stand. Vanessa grabbed her attorney's arm. Object! She can't testify against me. She's family. There is no family privilege in civil proceedings, Your Honor, David said calmly. Mrs. Torres is here voluntarily. Judge Thornton nodded slowly. I'll allow it. Mrs. Torres, please, take the stand. Rachel settled into the witness chair and was sworn in. She folded her hands in her lap, composed and calm. I could see her fingers trembling slightly, but her face revealed nothing. Mrs. Torres, I began, how long have you known me? 26 years. Since you started dating my sister? And would you say we have a good relationship? Rachel finally looked at Vanessa. Something passed between them. Pain, anger, something older and deeper than either. We did, Rachel said quietly. Until I discovered what my sister had been doing to you. Let me take you back to where this all began. Not the divorce, but the moment I realized my entire marriage had been a lie. It was 18 months ago, a Tuesday evening in October. I remember because it was the day after Columbus Day, and I had taken a rare day off to recover from a long weekend of call. Vanessa had said she was going to her book club, the same book club she had attended every Tuesday for the past 15 years. I was in my study, catching up on medical journals, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "Dr. Harrison, I think you should know the truth about your wife. Check her second phone, the one she keeps in the zippered pocket of her beige purse." I stared at the message for a long time. My first instinct was to dismiss it. A prank. A wrong number. Some kind of scam. But something about the specificity nagged at me. The beige purse. The zippered pocket. Vanessa had dozens of purses, but she did have a beige one, a Kate Spade she carried almost exclusively to her Tuesday book clubs. I told myself I wasn't going to look. I trusted my wife. We had built a life together, raised 2 children, weathered every storm. I wasn't the kind of man who snooped through his wife's belongings, but the message sat there on my phone, burning a hole in my conscience. At 11 that night, Vanessa came home. She kissed my cheek, complained about traffic, and went upstairs to shower. Her purse sat on the kitchen counter where she always left it. I didn't plan to look. I walked past it 3 times, telling myself to forget the text, to go to bed, to trust the woman I had loved for more than 2 decades. On the 4th pass, I unzipped the inner pocket. There was a phone inside. A cheap, prepaid smartphone, the kind you buy at a gas station. My hands were shaking as I turned it on. There was no password. The text messages loaded. Hundreds of them. Thousands of them. Stretching back years. I sat down heavily on a kitchen stool and began to read. The first thread was with someone saved only as M. The messages were explicit. Graphic. Describing encounters in hotels, in cars, in our own home when I was at work. Dates going back 7 years. The second thread was with J. Different tone, more emotional, declarations of love and plans for a future together. This one went back 4 years. The third thread was with T, more recent, only 18 months, but the messages were the most disturbing. They talked about money, my money, plans for the divorce, how to maximize the settlement, how to make me look like the villain. I scrolled through message after message, my world crumbling with every word. The woman I loved, the woman I had trusted completely, had been living a double life for nearly a decade. But it was the 4th thread that broke me, the one saved simply as BH. The messages with BH were different, more careful, more calculated. They discussed not just an affair, but a systematic plan to deceive me, to drain our joint accounts slowly, to hide assets, to document fabricated incidents of emotional abuse that never happened. And then I saw a message that made my blood run cold. "Don't worry about Rachel. She won't say anything. She's too scared of losing her share." Her share of what? I put the phone back exactly where I found it. I went upstairs, got into bed next to my wife, and stared at the ceiling until dawn. The next morning, I did something I had never done in my entire medical career. I called in sick, then I drove to my sister-in-law's house. Rachel lived in a modest home in San Jose, a far cry from our Palo Alto estate. She had never married, worked as a high school teacher, lived a quiet life. Vanessa had always spoken of her with a mixture of pity and condescension. Poor Rachel. She never had my ambition, my drive. Rachel opened the door, surprised to see me. "Marcus? What are you doing here? Is everything okay? Is Vanessa all right? Can I come in?" Something in my voice must have told her this wasn't a social call. She stepped aside without another word. We sat in her small living room, surrounded by bookshelves and cat figurines. "I found Vanessa's other phone," I said. Rachel's face went pale. She looked down at her hands. "I saw the messages, Rachel, all of them, including the ones that mention you." She was quiet for a long moment. When she looked up, there were tears in her eyes. "How much do you know?" she whispered. "Enough to know my marriage is a lie. But I don't understand your part in this. The messages said you're getting a share. A share of what?" Rachel stood up abruptly and walked to the window. She hugged herself, staring out at her small backyard. "Do you remember when our mother died?" she asked. 8 years ago? Of course. Vanessa was devastated. Rachel laughed bitterly. Devastated. That's one word for it. She turned to face me. "Our mother left everything to me, Marcus. The house in Sacramento, the investments, the life insurance. About $1.2 million total." I frowned. "Vanessa told me your mother's estate was split equally." That's what Vanessa told everyone. But Mom knew what Vanessa was. She had seen glimpses over the years. The manipulation. The lies. The way Vanessa used people. Mom changed her will 6 months before she died. Left everything to me, with a letter explaining why. So Vanessa got nothing? Vanessa got nothing, and she never forgave me for it. She said I must have manipulated Mom, poisoned her against her own daughter. Rachel's voice cracked. I showed her the letter. Mom's own words, explaining that Vanessa had been stealing from her for years. Little things at first, then bigger. Vanessa just laughed. Said Mom was senile. Said I had probably written the letter myself. She sat down across from me, her hands twisting in her lap. A year later, Vanessa came to me with an offer. She said she wouldn't contest the will, wouldn't drag my name through the mud, wouldn't tell everyone I had manipulated a dying woman. In exchange, I would give her half of everything. And you agreed? Rachel nodded miserably. I was scared, Marcus. You don't know what Vanessa can be like when she wants something. She can be convincing and cruel. She said she would destroy me. My career, my reputation, everything. She had already started a rumor at my school, told one of the other teachers that I had a drinking problem. So you paid her $600,000 over 3 years. Monthly payments, so it wouldn't look suspicious. She said it was the least I owed her, since Mom had clearly lost her mind at the end. I sat back, trying to process this. My wife had extorted her own sister, had been doing it for years, and I had never suspected a thing. Why didn't you tell me? Rachel looked at me with something like desperation. Would you have believed me? Vanessa is your wife. You love her. And she's very good at making people believe what she wants them to believe. She was right. A year ago, I would have defended Vanessa absolutely. I would have assumed Rachel was lying, motivated by jealousy or resentment. I would have been wrong. There's more, Rachel said quietly. Things I've heard over the years. Things I've seen. Tell me everything. And she did. Over the next 3 hours, Rachel painted a picture of my wife that I barely recognized. The affairs went back further than the phone suggested, at least 12 years, possibly longer. There had been at least 5 men that Rachel knew of, maybe more. The financial deception was even more extensive. Vanessa had been siphoning money from our accounts for years, small amounts that wouldn't trigger any alerts. She had a separate bank account in her maiden name. She had jewelry I had never seen, gifts from her lovers, hidden in a safe deposit box. But the worst part was what Vanessa had been planning for the future. She's been talking about divorcing you for at least 3 years, Rachel said. She was just waiting for the right time, waiting until she had enough hidden away, until she had documented enough abuse to make herself look like the victim. What abuse? I never touched her. I never even raised my voice. I know. But she's been keeping a journal. Fabricated entries about emotional abuse, about controlling behavior, about how you isolated her from her friends and family. She showed it to me once, asked me to confirm some dates. She's been building a case, Marcus. A fake case, but a detailed one. I felt sick. The woman I had loved, the woman I had shared a bed with for 23 years, had been meticulously planning my destruction. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. You've been protecting her secrets for years. Rachel met my eyes, and I saw something new there. Resolution. Because of what she did to my husband. I blinked. You've Never been married. No, I haven't, because 20 years ago I was engaged. His name was David. We were planning our wedding when Vanessa seduced him. She didn't even want him. She just wanted to prove that she could take him from me. Rachel's voice was steady, but tears were streaming down her face. She recorded them together, took pictures. Then she showed them to me, told me she was doing me a favor, proving he wasn't worthy of me. She said a real man wouldn't have been tempted. My God, Rachel, I've been carrying this for 20 years. 20 years of watching her manipulate everyone around her. 20 years of watching her destroy people and walk away smiling. I told myself it wasn't my place to interfere, that karma would catch up with her eventually. But when I saw those messages about you, about how she was planning to take everything you've worked for, how she was going to make you look like a monster, she reached across and took my hand. You're a good man, Marcus. You've been kind to me when my own sister treated me like an embarrassment. You deserve to know the truth. I spent the next few weeks gathering evidence. Not through any illegal means, nothing that would jeopardize a case. I hired a forensic accountant to review our finances. The discrepancies were staggering. Over the past decade, nearly $400,000 had disappeared into accounts and expenditures I knew nothing about. I hired a private investigator, not to follow my wife, but to document the assets she had hidden. The safe deposit box, the separate accounts, the expensive gifts she had received and squirreled away. Through it all, I continued to play the role of the oblivious husband. I went to work. I came home. I ate dinner with Vanessa and listened to her talk about her day, knowing that everything she said was a performance. It was the hardest thing I have ever done. One evening, she told me she wanted a divorce. She cried, said she felt like we had grown apart, said she thought we both deserved a chance to find happiness. She had clearly rehearsed the speech. It was perfect, a masterclass in false vulnerability. I agreed quietly, said I understood, said I wanted her to be happy. She seemed almost disappointed that I didn't fight harder. The divorce proceedings began. Vanessa's attorney came out swinging, painting a picture of a neglectful husband and a suffering wife. They submitted her journal as evidence. Pages and pages of fabricated abuse. They had character witnesses lined up, women from her book club who would testify to my coldness, my controlling nature. I let them build their case. I let them think they were winning. My attorney, David Chen, thought I was crazy. They're destroying you in there, he said after one particularly brutal hearing. Why won't you let me fight back? Because I'm not trying to win the battle, I told him. I'm trying to win the war. And for that, I need them to think they've already won. The day finally came. The preliminary hearing where the judge would evaluate the evidence and make recommendations for the final settlement. Vanessa's side had thrown everything they had at me. The journal, the witnesses, the tearful testimony about sacrificed dreams. And when the judge asked if I had anything to say in my defense, I called Rachel to the stand. The courtroom was absolutely silent as Rachel began to speak. My sister has been having affairs throughout her marriage, Rachel said, her voice steady despite the trembling of her hands. I personally know of at least 5 men over the past 12 years. I have names, dates, and in some cases, corroborating evidence. Vanessa's attorney shot to her feet. Objection, this is hearsay, Your Honor. Mrs. Torres, the judge said, can you substantiate these claims? Rachel nodded. I have text messages my sister sent me, bragging about her affairs. I have photographs she shared with me. And I have bank records showing transfers from accounts I didn't know about, payments for hotel rooms and gifts for men who weren't her husband. She pulled a thick folder from her bag. I also have documentation of my sister's financial crimes. She extorted $600,000 from me over 3 years by threatening to destroy my reputation. I have the bank records showing every payment. Vanessa was on her feet now, her face contorted with rage. She's lying! She's always been jealous of me. Sit down, Mrs. Harrison, the judge said sharply. But Vanessa couldn't stop. She's making this up because she's a bitter, lonely woman who could never keep a man. She's always hated me. I loved you, Rachel said quietly. You were my sister. I loved you even after you stole my fiancé just to prove you could. I loved you even when you extorted me for years. But I won't let you destroy another good man with your lies. The judge called a recess. But I could see in her eyes that everything had changed. Over the next 2 weeks, the case unraveled completely. The forensic accountant testified about the hidden accounts, the missing money, the systematic financial deception. The private investigator presented evidence of the affairs, including hotel receipts and credit card statements in my wife's maiden name. But the most damaging testimony came from an unexpected source. One of Vanessa's lovers, a man named Brian Hughes, came forward voluntarily. He was the BH from the text messages. He testified that Vanessa had told him explicitly about her plan to divorce me and take everything. He had records of their conversations, including one where she laughed about how easy it would be to manipulate the court. Why did he come forward? Because Vanessa had promised to leave me for him, and then dropped him the moment she found someone richer. Hell hath no fury, as they say. The judge's final ruling was devastating for Vanessa. No alimony. Not a penny. The judge cited California law regarding marital misconduct and Vanessa's systematic financial deception as grounds for denying any spousal support. The house stayed with me. I had purchased it before our marriage, had made every mortgage payment from my separate income, and Vanessa's attorneys couldn't prove otherwise. The retirement accounts were split according to the actual contributions, which meant Vanessa received far less than she had demanded, and the hidden assets Vanessa had accumulated through her extortion and deception, they were factored into the settlement as her portion, reducing her share of our legitimate marital property even further. When the final judgment was read, Vanessa stood up and pointed at Rachel. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "Both of you, you think you've won, but I'll make you pay for this humiliation." The judge's gavel came down hard. "Mrs. Harrison, one more outburst and I will hold you in contempt. These proceedings are concluded." I watched my wife, the woman I had loved for 23 years, storm out of the courtroom. Her attorney hurried after her, already talking about appeals that both of them knew would go nowhere. Rachel sat quietly in the gallery, her hands folded in her lap. I walked over and sat down beside her. "Thank you," I said. "I know that wasn't easy." She shook her head. "It was the easiest thing I've ever done, and the hardest." She looked at me with tears in her eyes. "I should have said something years ago. Maybe things would have been different. You said something when it mattered." We sat in silence for a moment, two people connected by the worst kind of family tragedy. "What will you do now?" Rachel asked. I thought about it. The house that would feel too big without someone to share it. The practice that had consumed so much of my life. The children who would have to choose sides in a war they never asked to be part of. "I don't know," I admitted. "Start over, I suppose. It's not too late for that, is it?" Rachel smiled sadly. "It's never too late. I learned that today. 6 months have passed since that day in court. The divorce is final. Vanessa moved to Arizona, where one of her remaining friends lives. Our children, both adults now, have processed the truth in their own ways. My daughter hasn't spoken to her mother since the trial. My son is more forgiving, but even he keeps his distance. I sold the house in Palo Alto. Too many memories, too many ghosts. I bought a smaller place closer to the hospital, something manageable for a man my age living alone. I donated the furniture from our marriage to charity. Started fresh. Rachel and I have coffee every few weeks. We're not close, exactly, but we understand each other in a way that others can't. We're both survivors of the same storm. The anonymous text that started everything? I never found out who sent it. Maybe it was one of Vanessa's discarded lovers, seeking revenge. Maybe it was someone who worked at the bank and noticed the financial irregularities. Maybe it was just the universe finally deciding that enough was enough. I don't think about Vanessa much anymore. The anger faded faster than I expected. What replaced it wasn't forgiveness, exactly, but something like acceptance. She was who she was. I couldn't change that. I could only control how I moved forward. A few weeks ago, I ran into Brian Hughes at a restaurant downtown. He looked uncomfortable, like he expected me to confront him. Instead, I nodded and kept walking. He had done me a favor, in the end. The enemy of my enemy, as they say. Last week, I delivered a baby. A little girl, 7 pounds, 6 ounces, screaming her head off the moment she entered the world. Her parents were young, in love, looking at each other like they had invented the emotion. I placed their daughter in her mother's arms and stepped back, watching the three of them begin their life together. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt something I thought I had lost forever. Hope. You never know what lies beneath the surface of a marriage. You never know what secrets people carry, what masks they wear. I spent 23 years with a stranger, believing every lie because I wanted to believe. But here's what I've learned. The truth has a way of surfacing. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow. But eventually, always, the truth comes out. And when it does, you have a choice. You can let it destroy you, or you can let it set you free. I chose freedom. If you're watching this and you're in a similar situation, if something in your gut is telling you that things aren't what they seem, trust that instinct. Don't ignore it, like I did for too long. The truth might be painful, but living a lie is worse. And if you have someone in your life like Rachel, someone who has the courage to speak the truth when it matters most, cherish them. Those people are rare. Those people can save your life. Thank you for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to tell, but I hope it helps someone out there who needs to hear it. The storm is over, the sun is coming up, and for the first time in years, I can finally see clearly. Take care of yourselves, and remember, it's never too late to start again.